Mr. Large in Charge by Jill Murphy. Mrs. Large opened one eye and peered out at the morning. She forced open the other eye, dragged herself out of bed, and set off downstairs to the kitchen, where Mr. Large had kindly started the children on their breakfasts. "You look awful, dear," said Mr. Large. "Don't say that to Mommy," said Laura indignantly. "Mommy looks beautiful," exclaimed Lester. "Boo-foo, Mommy," cooed the baby. "Yes, of course Mommy's beautiful," said Mr. Large. "I meant she doesn't look well. Are you feeling all right, dear?" "As a matter of fact, I don't feel too good," admitted Mrs. Large. "But I was going to take the children to the park later on. Then there's the shopping and the lunch, and there's—" "Well, you don't have to worry about any of that," said Mr. Large. "It's the weekend, so I'm in charge. Go on, back to bed with you. We'll take care of everything, won't we, kids?" "You bet," yelled Lester. Mrs. Large trudged back upstairs, clutching a nice hot water bottle, and sank back into the bed, which was still warm. "What a treat," she said. Downstairs, Mr. Large was organizing his troops. "Right, men," he commanded. "We're not all men," said Laura. "Oh, you know what I mean," said Mr. Large. "Well, troops then. All right. I'll take the worst task. That's doing the dishes. Lester, you tackle the vacuuming. Luke, picking things up off of the floor. Laura and the baby, general dusting and cushion plumping. Quick, march, 1, 2, 1, 2. Off you go." Mr. Large turned on the radio, found a cheery tune to get everyone going, and soon they were all busy with their tasks. Upstairs, Mrs. Large was jolted from the brink of sleep by the astonishing amount of noise blasting up through the floor. She listened anxiously for a while, but could soon tell they were mostly happy noises, so she wedged a pillow around her ears and decided to ignore it. Mrs. Large had just drifted off to sleep when she was startled awake by the baby, who was giving her a thorough dusting. "Sorry, Mom," yelled Laura, rushing in and grabbing the baby. The baby began to scream and hung onto the covers so that they both fell over backward. "This isn't proving very restful, Laura," said Mrs. Large crossly, as Laura disentangled herself and the baby and attempted to bundle the covers back onto the bed. "Mommy, huggy!" screamed the baby. "Want my mommy, big huggy now!" Laura stuffed the baby under her arms and wrestled her out the door. "Don't worry, Mom," she called as she closed the door behind them. "I'll take her down to Dad." "Don't want Dad," bellowed the baby. "Want Mom! Want my mommy!" Mrs. Large rearranged the mangled covers and snuggled down, feeling decidedly jangled. Suddenly there was an almighty crunch from downstairs, and the vacuum stopped abruptly. The bedroom door opened, and Lester looked in. "It's all right, Mom," he reassured her. "Nothing broke. It just sounded bad." Luke's head appeared around Lester's knees. "That's right, Mom," he agreed. "Nothing to worry about. You just go back to sleep. Everything's under control." Mrs. Large was finally dropping off when Mr. Large crashed open the bedroom door. "We're all off to the park now, dear," he announced. "We'll do the shopping on our way home. Then we can bring you up a nice lunch." "Thank you, dear," said Mrs. Large. "I'm having a lovely rest." Mr. Large beamed and blew his wife a kiss as he backed out of the room, closing the door very quietly. At last, Mrs. Large dozed off. What seemed like 5 minutes later, she was awakened by a smell of burning. Just then, Laura put her head around the door. "Dad says not to worry about the smell," she said. "He's getting lunch and he wants to know if you'd like some." "What exactly is it?" asked Mrs. Large nervously. "Well," said Laura, "it was something in a special sauce, but Dad just had a little peek at the soccer game on TV. Well, it was quite a long peek, actually. So now it's cheese sandwiches." "I think I'll keep on sleeping. Thank you, dear," said Mrs. Large. "Perhaps I could join you for a snack later." "Okay," said Laura, slamming the door as she rushed off to tell Dad. Mrs. Large closed her eyes and tried to relax. What seemed like 3 seconds later, the door crashed open again, and all the children came charging in. "We're going to play soccer with Dad," yelled Lester. "In the yard," said Luke. "Now," said the baby. "Are you feeling a little bit better?" asked Laura. "Mommy better?" asked the baby. "Big huggy." "A bit better," said Mrs. Large. "You go and have fun with Daddy, and perhaps I'll be right along later." "Big, big huggy," wailed the baby as Lester scooped her up and carried her outside. "Big huggy, Mommy, now." "Don't worry, Mom," said Laura. "She loves soccer once she gets going." The door slammed shut for the 100th time. Mrs. Large winced and slithered down under the covers. Joyful sounds came drifting in from the yard, and Mrs. Large smiled contentedly. 5 minutes later, Lester burst into the bedroom. "Dad wants to know where the bandages are," he yelled. "Don't worry, Mom, it's not the baby. Dad tripped over the rake." "They're on top of the bathroom cabinet," said Mrs. Large weakly. After a while, the door opened again, and Mr. Large came in carrying a tray laden with food. The children sneaked in behind him and lurked. The baby didn't lurk for long. She climbed grimly onto the bed and clasped her mother around the neck. "Big huggy," she crooned. "Everyone out," ordered Mr. Large. "Let Mommy have her rest now. She's not well today." Mrs. Large heaved herself into a sitting position and patted the covers. "That's all right, dear," she said. "I've had a very restful day and I'm feeling much better now. Why don't you all join me for a snack?" "Well, if you're sure," said Mr. Large, and everyone piled onto the bed to tell Mrs. Large all about the day she missed. The end.